Okay, my name is Ruth Berry, and my name pops up a lot, I'm told, on this schedule because I've produced about 9 panels here. This is one that I'm actually most interested in because I would love to co-produce with Asia. And who out there has ever co-produced with Asia before? I mean, I know, yes. Okay, we have one. So I gathered that the rest of you are here to learn a little bit about it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to introduce you to Tony first, and Tony is the Managing Director of Off the Fence Singapore. And there is an Off the Fence in Holland, and Tony has recently, in the last couple of years, started Off the Fence in Singapore, a very, very successful distribution company. And then we're going to speak with Ken on my left from NHK and Jessie from Taiwan. And these guys are the commissioning editors. And I've forgotten your name already. Kenny. Yeah. Kenny. Okay. So Kenny's from Korea, and these guys are actually going to tell us a little bit about their slots and how they work in co-productions. Now, first of all, and then, sorry, I forgot you, Nha-Uyen. Nha-Uyen actually works in Australia, but she's also a successful distributor who used to work with Off the Fence. It's all very incestuous. And she will be talking about her experiences of working with Asia and also giving us sort of some do's and don'ts. So, without further ado, I'm going to ask Tony to tell us, what are we talking about when we talk about Asia? Are we, like, give us the countries that you know, when somebody says co-production with Asia, are we talking, yeah. We're talking East Asia, right? So give us a rundown.
Wow, really, I mean, Asia is huge. I mean, we know it comprises of what, 500 million populations, and East Asia, Southeast Asia, South Asia. Right now, I guess the most vibrant part of Asia, beside China, been in the forefront of a lot of the interest, and India, I guess. Places like Japan and Korea shows a lot of promise, or promising kind of like co-production opportunities. And of course, my own country where I'm based now, Singapore. I think a lot of people have been looking at Asia for co-production, but a lot of people are quite afraid to venture into Asia, especially it is something that's uncharted, and a lot of people know that there are money there, but they do not know whether the culturally and a lot of the other kind of situation might allow them to get in and get themselves burned, or maybe they will be successfully doing it. But I guess like any other a business deal, you have to, you know, learn from failure, I guess. I think we have a lot of that experience. Been in the business for 16 years. I think I was the face of Asian co-production for several years, and I worked with Japan,
so
Korea.
So you were a producer?
Yeah, I actually produce now as well, but I started off in production, and then I moved on to basically production and distribution. Now I look after as well as acquisition. I started Off the Fence as a joint venture with the Amsterdam headquarters, and about 4.5 years ago. And right now the reason for Off the Fence in Asia is because we have 5,000 hours of catalog, and it's best to be based in Singapore, in Asia, to get our salespeople to push through those library, than basically having someone in Amsterdam with the time difference and of course culturally as well. We need someone in Asia, and Asian, to look after our Asian business. So my Asian sales manager from Taiwan, based in Singapore, basically do all the sales and distribution in Singapore. And then I also look after acquisition, because I think more and more their Asian content require Asian sort of content subject matters that Asian buyers want. So we can't just push for the American, European content. We're looking for Asian lifestyle, Asian shows to go in, as well in Asia territory that buyers are looking for. And the third part, of course, production. Production, we look at two: original content production that we as a production company in Singapore with our Bristol resources could work on, or we co-produce with Asian producers, or even Australian producers that we could co-produce, primarily for reasons of resources and financial kind of arrangement, because they are co-production treaties, Singapore with Canada, Singapore with Australia, and a few other co-production sort of deals that's been made on the sideline with China, with Korea, with Japan. But those are really sort of like what the government in Singapore is trying to push for. But the reality of it is that what I'm trying to share is I want to show you more of the challenges of doing co-production in Asia rather than telling you all the good things, because that's not true. A lot of people think that there are a lot of money there. But yes, there are money there. But the steps to doing that as well is even more challenging, because from my experience, really, I realized a lot of the European broadcasters or producers went into Asia thinking they can tap a gold mine. And then they went in there and they're using production company in Singapore as a vehicle to tap into the money that the government is interested to give to promote the local industry. And it ended up that the local company was just purely a vehicle, not a content producer. What they do is that they just provide the production support to the editorial of the European broadcasters. And in that situation, the Asian producers never grown. No skills transfer, nothing actually did result out of the whole process, and the producers continue to be a service provider. And I get very disheartened to see that kind of structure a lot in Asia, because it was purely chased after the money. It wasn't really about partnership. I think what we're trying to do right in Asia is partnership. That means creatively we develop, and that takes time. So in my understanding, I always say, when we talk about Asia co-production, I talk about the 3 R's. What are the 3 R's? The right project or the right story, the right partnership, or the right partner, and the right working model. And the 3 R's are what I would be very interested to look at when you talk about successful co-production. If you don't do that, I think you end up to be one-sided. And now it's getting harder in Asia, because every funding agencies are getting smarter. They look at project and they say, hey, I mean, how does that benefit the local industry? Are we just giving this money out to benefit a Australian broadcaster, a Korean broadcaster, or even a European broadcaster? France Television does a lot of co-production in Singapore. Same with Arte. Same, I mean, even BBC Worldwide have gone in and do some commercial deals. But generally speaking, you know, there are pros and cons. I mean, France Television do big project. They got the Singapore producers to be part of the vehicle to tap into the Media Development Authority, which is the funding agent in Singapore.
So is everybody aware of the Singapore Media Development Agency?
Yeah, I think some
and
of
this
you
is one of the groups that we often hear in Europe. MDA have money.
Shocking.
So,
yeah.
Shocking.
Because they go around telling people they are ATM machine, which I was quite shocked, you know.
What do they say? They're an ATM machine.
Yeah. Not true.
Not true.
Maybe 10 years ago. But right now, I guess the ATM machine is drying up, basically. Or maybe they are not drying up.
Do you know, is there a place where the ATM is opening up again in Asia, do you think?
The ATM opening up? They're relooking.
Would it be Malaysia the next?
But they're run by bureaucrats, and it needs to tick the boxes. I mean, in some way, it's different from Canada or Australia, where there are people who used to be working in the industry, or they are, you know, veteran in the production industry who knows about the industry to actually decide on projects, and they are much more clued into what the whole industry works. I mean, for the MDA or the Media Development Authority of Singapore, they are basically civil servants, and what they do is that, you know, pencil pushing. Fill the form, and to do a co-pro, you fill 80 pages of form. By the time you finish filling, you're dead. That's terrible. I mean, and now they're going automation. That means everything go through online submission, and that takes forever. I just submitted one project, and I have to be rejected 17 times because there was one mistake and a date wrong and a figure wrong, and then you get rejected and you resubmit, and until 17 times, and that took me 6 months. I said, forget it. I'm not playing. Basically, I mean, that's... let's just talk a little bit about what is the thing you most dislike about people walking in wanting to co-produce? Now, you've already said they come for the money, but do they also come because they think they're better at all? And they you know, tell me, just have a little bitch about this. The honest truth is, I don't think the money part is wrong. I don't think that is, and the reality is that we're all, in this industry, right, in money is teen, and we need to go for where the money is, and that's the truth. And I'm not saying that that's wrong, but what I'm saying is that when you look at it, there's a lot of development differences between country to country. For example, Singapore and Canada, they're so different, but they have co-production treaty, but the co-production treaty is not conducive to making more show because the the Canadian credit system, point system, doesn't work well with the Singapore more developing system, which means it ended up to be Canadian has to fulfill the Canadian corporate requirement that the Singapore companies will have problem because they're not yet developed to that level of maturity. So in that sense, over what we have the treaty for 15 years, but how many real projects has been made? Maybe 5.
Right.
So that shows.
So 5. Okay. Have you got something that you can show that was?
Okay, I'll show you an example of a co-production. When Off the Fence started about 4.5 years ago, we tried a system of initiative which we hope that we can bring forward to the Singapore company by skill transferring wildlife and natural history genre into
So what
Asia.
you're talking about, you do a co-production where you have a very experienced producer coming in from outside and working with.
The project, we got National Geographic, and then we also have the Media Development Authority of Singapore to fund the initiative. 15 projects over 3 years, and each project $300,000, and it will be commissioned to a local production company in Singapore for that whole project so that they could develop. And we commissioned about 3 or 4 good production houses in Singapore, and the result of those projects, I would like to show one 5-minute clip of a project that we collaborated with these producers in Singapore, and it's for National Geographic International, which I thought is a good example of that kind of co-pro model.
And one more thing, so the 5 good projects have come out of how many years?
15 hours over 3 years.
Okay, 15 over 3, but how many really, when we're talking top production companies in Singapore who are really, doing stuff, how many would there be?
Maybe 2.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and I want to share also the bad example. There are the good and
we'll
the
show a
bad
bad later, but let's have a look at your clip now, which is...
Can we just play DVD 1, please? Monster Jellyfish.
Monster Jellyfish.
Yeah, my goodness.
The Nomura jellyfish, one of the largest in the world. They can grow to over 2 meters wide and weigh more than 200 kilograms. Drifting through the ocean since before the dinosaurs, without blood, bones, or a brain. Billions are now heading into Japanese waters. Their giant bodies gracefully float through the oceans. But these jellyfish devastate ecosystems, and they're lethal to the local fishing industry. No one knows why Nomura blooms are increasing. Is it global warming or man-made pollution? Swarms that happened every 4 decades now strike nearly every year. Can science prevent jellyfish from taking over the oceans?
It's very difficult to stop this jellyfish. They can survive forever.
We thought it would be a horror movie.
Looks like a blob.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that was National Geographic International.
National Geographic International.
Okay, so that was shown on their global networks. They all put in a bit of money, and
US bought it. We distribute them. We EP and distribute, and Nat Geo International broadcast first run for Asia.
But there was Nat Geo US.
No, Nat Geo International.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay. It's just with the subtitles. I just wondered, how.
Yeah.
So National Geographic International. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to move along the line a bit so that everybody gets to put forward, and then we're going to actually come back and talk about sort of do's and don'ts and what sort of projects you think are good to come in. I'm going to introduce now Ken. No, I'm not. I lied. I'm going to introduce... I just have to keep you on your toes. Yeah. I'm going to, because it's sort of like boy-girl sort of thing. Yeah. Okay. So, don't worry. It's gender balance. Oh, no, he's a man.
Oh, God.
Yeah, you're right.
Are you? Am I?
Jessie, could you please talk a little bit about your broadcaster, who you work with, and what you're actually doing with co-production outside of Taiwan?
Okay.
Yep.
just like Tony have mentioned about this, normally Asian broadcaster, from the beginning of our international co-production, from actually the year of 2000, we play more like a role of local fixing. But things are changing now that the relationship more like become partner. So I think that's why Ruth is talking about this don't. And so to start with the mindset, I would suggest that except that you have a deep love or wish to cooperate with Asian broadcaster, I will strongly suggest that you come with the open-minded to start with. And then with really, I wouldn't say respect, but at least it's an equal mindset to talk things. I think that's very important. And then the third mindset I would suggest is to be realistic about the expectation. Not only the budget, but also about the role play in the working process. And that's how I find it's the most important thing. So as I mentioned that it comes to the second stage that normally we will think about the international co-production will be broadcaster to broadcaster. But from our past experiences, I find it more true in that to have a well-established, for instance, European producer or production company to go directly to the Asian broadcaster, like Chinese broadcaster, will work. And then I will raise an example later, but normally we will start from the idea. And I think it's, we are talking about this mutual relationship. So I would suggest that maybe to start to co-research to see how feasible it can be to achieve the project. And I have a clip to show you about a program we just co-produced last year. Actually, it started from the year before. It's called Bird Without Borders. And it was actually represented by Of Defense now. And I'm going to show you the clip. Can you play the clip? And you will see how it's not a promotion reel. It's just behind the scene. So you can see the director is from Britain. They are the company called Infocus Asia. They are based in Asia now, and they are all ex-BBC's reporters. Can you show the clip? It's a kind of migrating birds fly through the politically divided area, 4 countries, North Korea, South Korea. This is the director, Dean Johnson. And we co-developed these ideas and research it together. And as you can see, Jono is a very good actor. And in this clip, you will see
I wanted to show the history of Thailand. So we found this great cannon here, this really big cannon. But a movement of a crane needs something, needs some foreground in front. So when the movement happens, you can see how dynamic it is.
He is also the first camera, and we provide the second camera.
And we use the motion silent main motor, we use this motion of the boat. So just small camera moves up and to the left and up and to the right makes it very dramatic when you're moving forward.
This is Jono together with the special camera experts on wildlife to show this black-faced spoonbill, which is a very delicate migrating birds. Why you have to get a covered tent? Here is a better place. Mr. Liang is the top wildlife camera person in Taiwan who used to make some footage for Discovery International. This. Okay, let's cut it here. So as I said, and Tony also mentioned that to form a mixed crew is the #1 thing that to enter international co-production. And I think it's so pragmatic to suggest that that we just take advantage of each other's to give and take for the best part. And then I think we can have a good start of any project. And this is only the one of the example we co-produce with British filmmakers. And for other, I just gave Ruth the DVD. It's we co-produce Arte about this culture theme. It's a national treasure. Series. Right now it become a series co-produced with Arte France. And especially PTS has played a role as not only in research, but also for the access, the special access to the subject and the character. In this case, it's the National Palace Museum because not only bureaucratic, they all think they are the guardian of the national treasure. So it's like 10 times or 50 times harder to deal with. So, so in this case, we play a very important part in order to smooth out all the tension and all the paperwork, and because they are very, very strict about all this and that licensing or authorization of any object. Okay, I think I was. So
Jessie, if you could, was the knowledge transfer really successful? I mean, after doing this Birds Without Borders, what has happened to, like, for example, the Taiwan crew? Have they gone on? Have they grown? I mean, is it really?
Yes, I think again I want to emphasize on the reciprocal, the mutual growth. Because international co-production, sometimes you will wonder why you are doing this. Because it's harder and because of language barrier. But believe me, if you finish a project, then you find it, although painful, but also fruitful. Not only for the project itself, but also for yourself. You become more and more multicultural driven. And for me, I think it's somehow it's so like embedded in our more independent filmmakers. And right now I'm trying to do more in this creative documentary genre. But believe me, it's very, very hard because since its inception of PTS in 1998, it became the gathering point of the creative, local creative documentary. For obvious reason, because Taiwan is more democratic and more free, have enjoyed more freedom of speech compared with China. But But you know that in terms of international, for Chinese broadcaster especially, to open up more social, political type, or you know, more thought-provoking type of documentary still takes some time. So I'm thinking more about creating all this tendency, you know, to encourage more maybe three-party co-production among the mainland China, Taiwan, or even a quadro or even multi-partner in terms of, you know, a little bit that the Chinese society to more open up to more creative documentary. Yes.
How much money do you put into your co-productions? I'm sure it's all different depending upon what you're doing, but like when, if I were to approach you and say, look, I have this fantastic idea about the tiny burrowing worm that's living in some, you know, I mean, imagine I pitch you something and I want to join with, you know, a crew from your country, and I just come to you. How much money do you actually put in?
Yeah, actually, it involved with direct and indirect cost. But for the direct cash investment, it depends on the how relevant the subject matters to Chinese, you know, matter. Mm-hmm. Because I'm afraid I try so hard, but unlike European broadcaster, Chinese broadcaster tend to only, you know, like limited to things more related to Chinese society. But on one front, it's very different. It's the sustainable issue, the sustainability topic, as I mentioned yesterday. Because it's, first of all, non-political, and it's
so non-political's good, wildlife's good,
yeah, and
science?
And about the amount, if it is relevant to Taiwan, maybe start from 40,000 and up. Yeah.
And who do you, as far as another broadcaster goes, who do you co-produce well with in the international market? Because, I mean, that would be maybe a quarter of what one might need.
Actually, fortunately enough, all our co-production with British filmmakers are all very successful, including the Orchid Island, which is also an environmental sustainable issue, also represented by all of the fans, and the Border Without Borders, I believe so, and I think right now with Arte France, and
okay, so Arte is actually a very good co-pro partner.
Yeah,
for
Arte.
you. Yep.
So in order to for us to chip in, I would strongly suggest that to start with European, you know, broadcaster. If you can allocate or nail down certain of the funders, then it will become easier and for us to, in order to chip in more money. And I still want to go back to what Tony just said, that a good working process, it's also a learning process, because, for instance, the cooperation between us and in Focus Asia, I believe the one you just showed is also produced by them. They are those British filmmaker I call very with all very good attitudes and open-minded, and also they also have multicultural drive. So we cooperate very well with each other, and they enjoy freedom of creation, which they can't have when they co-produce with formatted TV content. So it's like, you know, it's like mutual.
So it's give and take. Yep.
Yeah. It's
well, we'll move on now to Ken, who is from NHK. Ken, we always hear that NHK have all this money.
where the big money is.
How much? First of all, I just want to ask you, but just explain where you're coming from within NHK. Are you like a
Okay, I'm the
documentary
producer of the slot called World Documentary. This slot is for the films produced by foreign broadcaster or independent productions about foreign affairs.
foreign affairs? Yeah.
Mainly the issue, mainly about social issues or current affairs. I do take documentary about music, technology, or arts, but I like to show I like to see the transformation or reality of the society through music or arts. So I do not take purely musical documentary, no. And because my slot is from Monday to Thursday, so I need 120 films every year, and I have budget for acquisition, mainly for acquisition and pre-buy and co-production. And I have now 15 projects right now, 3 from Canada and States, and I think 5 from Asia, and 8 or 9 from European countries. So mainly about half of them are from with European independent producers. And we have another slot, but they are mainly co-produced with broadcasters. Okay, so yeah.
So with your slot, which is so foreign by nature, so you obviously don't need a Japanese co-producer involved. Like this is like an opportunity for basically international producers to come to you and pitch these.
Yes.
Which is nice to hear for everybody out there. So,
but when you come to me,
yeah,
you have to persuade the broadcaster in your country. Of course, yes, because if you cannot, I cannot give you the money.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course.
But it seems like a so just tell us a little bit about the sorts of programs you're showing then, so that like the style, are they hours?
As we have 2,000 directors in NHK.
2,000 directors?
In NHK.
Yes.
Directors and producers. And they travel a lot around the world. So you have to compete with them. Okay? So it's a serious problem. But my slot, one of the big purpose, my issue for me is to show films which are different from NHK style.
Ah.
Yeah. So maybe cinema verite, character-driven, observational thing is okay. Of course, I love the investigation style because I'm from news section. But I like to see the film which is different from NHK style. Okay, and because I was in NHK Enterprises and I was a distributor for 4 years, so I know that the NHK documentary do not sell well in Europe. Everyone say that the style is the editing style is slow, too much narration, too much information, too educational. So this is NHK way. So I think.
Maybe just give me, a couple of examples then. Just give us a little synopsis of maybe one of the shows that you liked and it was an easy sell for you, or an easy something a producer came with you and you just said yes.
Okay. Now I'm co-producing, or I'm a part of the project called Russian and the West, produced by Blue Clapping, the famous production in England.
Yes.
And I co-produced the Amazon project, the 3D research about Amazon, which is produced by French French 5, something like that.
Gideon, is it Gideon involved in that?
Yeah. And another one is about the XP syndrome. The children who cannot play under the sea, under the sun.
And the sun, yes, yep.
It can be caused
okay, so it's very broad. So you have, very broad.
Yeah. And as for Asia, I produced a documentary about Sichuan earthquake.
Ah, yes, yeah.
And about the defectors from North Korea. And I'm co-producing about a project called Uncle Joe. He's a merchant. He has a truck with the many goods. He's traveling around the mountain area. He's selling goods to all people who can go to town to buy. So it's a very small story.
Small story, yeah. So big, small,
very broad.
Very broad.
Yeah.
So, okay, now I'm going to ask you again about the colour of your money. So that's very open for a lot of people, I guess. So I mean, this is good.
It's very. I always explain that the budget of NHK, my slot is between the Scandinavian broadcaster and German or French broadcasters. So you can guess.
So it's not huge, but it's
not
certainly
huge,
enough for a lot of. So how can we meet you at various events and that? Like, do you go to MIP? Do you go to, or is it best to pitch to send it?
MIP, so
no,
I don't go.
You don't like MIP, so you don't go.
And my team go to INFA, Sheffield, Sunnyside. Maybe we want to go Berlin. And as for Asia, we go to Guangzhou Film Festival and the CNEX Film Festival, which began last year, and EIDF in Korea. Maybe.
So what we might do at the end is sort of just give you the list of those places that would be good actually to go to, and about which ones are the better ones to catch up and more intimate, instead of like being. This is the problem with MIP. There are like so many people that it's very hard. But and can people actually email and you will?
Oh, of course,
yes.
But as you know, I receive so many emails.
Tell me.
Projects. Okay. So as I said, I have to screen maybe more than 500 or 1,000 hours a year. So maybe you should see me first. Then everything starts after the meeting.
Oh, one-on-one. Very good. Okay, well, I'm actually going to bring Kenny in now, who is going to talk about Korea. And if you could just explain your broadcaster and just really what Jesse and Ken were talking about here.
Well, thank you. I'm Kenny. I'm from Korean television, KBS. KBS is a public broadcaster in South Korea, which is very similar to NHK in Japan. Mostly, we follow the way the NHK does, but it's some different. For example, once you get NHK, it's very easy to get a KBS as well. We don't have that much money like the NHK has.
Like you have.
But we also have the slot called World Docu. The title is exactly same, and we have very general interest. And people say that working with a Korean broadcast is somewhat difficult, as is very true, because we don't have the Ken-Ichi Mamura-san at KBS. What I mean is there is no single window. We don't have commission editors.
Right.
But for documentaries, it's dealt by documentary department. And all inserting program into our slots are done by program department. But however, all the international related cooperation is done by international relations department where I work. So you will need 3 parties internally at KBS, but finally their buying and selling is done by KBS Media, which is our subsidiary company. It's quite complicated, but yes, yes. I'm sorry.
But you're the linchpin, are you, Kenny?
Sorry?
I mean, you're the. If somebody comes up to you, you would help them through the quagmire of the Korean broadcasting system.
But this is given fact. You have to understand it. It's our internal hierarchy, and each department is all relevant.
Well, don't worry. In Europe, sometimes you don't know who you're talking to, and I mean, really, it's
but
not so difficult.
When you would like to work with the Japanese partner, he said, see him, right? I would say is you need to talk to me, as I work as a coordinator of all 4 parties at KBS.
Okay.
And for us, actually, we haven't co-produced a lot with European partners, but mostly with our neighbors, with the NHK, and with the Chinese partners. But now we are very much looking forward to working with the European partners, and like Tony said, there was ATM. The MDA was called the ATM. You have another ATM.
Where's the ATM?
From
my ears are pricking
ATM
up
machine.
Korea is an ATM too. Wow.
Yeah, maybe if you could get the right access. There is COCA, which is like MDA, and also we have KCC.
What does that what is COCA?
Korean. Correct. Something like that. I can't remember. But it's governing government body, and also we have KCC. The KCC, we have huge fund, and it's applied only for the FTA signed countries. Just a year before, it's for Singapore and Asia, ASEAN countries, and some Scandinavian countries. But now we signed a FTA with the EU. That means most of the European countries can apply that fund. So if you get the fund, it's very easy to get the Korean broadcasting partner. And as Ken-Ichi said,
ask you
sure.
How much money? I know I keep asking about money, but I mean,
Yeah.
So how much, what does that, I mean, okay, so you're saying that you don't put in a whole lot, but this fund could add to that. Now, what are we talking about as far as maybe a percentage of a budget? If I came to you with a budget and I've got a €300,000 film, what percentage do you think one could get out of...
to eligible to get the fund, you will need Korean partners.
Yeah,
definitely.
And would you suggest Korean partners?
Yeah, KBS.
Very good. People
if
that you're
you
happy
get
to
KBS,
work with.
it's easy to get the fund.
Yes. Which of course is always a good idea, is to ask the broadcaster who you should work with.
But as Ken-Ichi said, we will also need the European channel. If you get the major European channel, it will be very easy. If you get the major European channel, like BBC, RTL, ZDF, France Television, it's very easy to get the fund as well. Because Koreans like the big names.
What do you think? Give me an idea of a big name. What big names?
KBS is the...
No, I'm saying in Europe, when you're thinking...
the major public broadcaster,
Yeah.
the government...
So you like ZDF, maybe?
Yeah.
Arte?
Arte.
BBC.
BBC.
This is interesting because Arte, of course, don't pay us a lot of money as producers. Okay, so for example, we might get, or well, me.
So for
okay.
the independent producer or production company, if they have partnership already with art, we have already art there, then it's more helpful to get the fund.
Good.
No?
Yeah. Good. Okay. Well, look, we might move on now. Thank
sure.
you for that. Oh, there's more money than I thought there was around. Oh. Yeah, please ask. Actually, you can ask questions anytime you like.
Just a quick question, because we were talking about money and everything else, but can you speak a little bit about the topics, the areas that you are interested in? For instance, especially history. Is history a topic at all? Is it wildlife?
Yeah, actually, we have a general interest. Everything can be done. However, relevance is very important. Just a year before, there was in Hong Kong, there was a pitch about Chernobyl at the time. My answer was, it's not very relevant to Koreans, so forget about the Chernobyl. That was my answer. But after 1 year, after disaster in Japan, my CEO asked to buy Chernobyl because it gets very, very relevant. So relevance is always the key factor considering getting the partnership.
And as Jesse was saying before, obviously sustainability is a very important topic. You actually use the word sustainability and environment. You know, a lot of broadcasters don't really like that word even though they want this sort of programming. It's always been very hard to sell green films. Now it's getting easier, of course, but it's still, you know, it's good to hear that you're actually very, you know, interested in that topic. So yeah, and that's a global thing. So I mean, global issues are very important. Yeah. Okay, we're going to move on to Nha-Uyen. Nha-Uyen is based in Melbourne and works, or she has her own company called Looking Glass, and she actually used to work with Off the Fence. So Nha-Uyen, if you could just tell me a little bit about your involvement with Asian co-production.
So I've worked in Asia for 10 years now, because when I was at Off the Fence, I was the sales executive for Asia and Pacific. And I think just following on from what the broadcasters and Tony have said is that now you understand how diverse Asia actually is. And I think one important thing for producers to keep in mind is that any project that you do take to a broadcaster really needs to be relevant to the region. And it is such a diverse and segmented region. So what works for Japan doesn't necessarily work for Indonesia. And I think generally genres in documentaries that do work include wildlife, science, and history if it's more along the lines of civilization. So, you know, for example, NHK likes ancient Egypt documentaries, you know, with high-end CGI, and I think KBS also likes that as well. So, so that it's very important to understand that, and I think continuing on from what Jesse said and what Tony said is that co-producing in Asia really is, has to be a true partnership. I mean, you have to go in there willing to share ideas and not, I think a lot of, especially Europeans and Americans who go into Asia have this superiority complex where they think that the skills and the talents of Asian producers and companies aren't quite there, but it is an emerging region and a very dynamic region, and I think there's a lot of skill sharing there for you to do. I think what I'd like to also talk about are the various funding bodies out there that also does have some money, and I think the important thing here is, for example, with the MDA, the Media Development Authority in Singapore, if you want to work with and try and tap into that money, it is important for you to establish a relationship with a local company there, because their mission is really to build talent, their local talent there. And so
how would somebody know, how do we know the company to work with? When there's so many people you meet at markets and you think, oh, that's a nice person.
That's also important. I mean, companies such as Looking Glass and Off the Fence obviously have relationships with these producers, and it is important for you to pair up with the right producer as well, because the producers need to have a track record of working with broadcasters as well as the MDA. So they're accredited companies from the, within the MDA, and there are certain companies that are accepted. I think it's really a trial and error, because some people have had really bad relationships working with local companies, and that's why a distributor is always a good place to start if you're not familiar with the region as well. So the MDA is no longer a cosmic cash machine, that's for sure. They've become more bureaucratic. But there is potential now. I don't know if, China especially now is starting to, they've been doing international co-productions for a while, and there's the CICC, which is the China Intercontinental Communication Centre. They actually do have money to co-produce with producers, and their mandate really is to bring China to the world. So if you have a great project that has a Chinese theme, they are very open to working with co-producers, co-productions there. I mean, they've worked with, National Geographic, Arte, BBC, and it's very high-end productions as well. So that is also potential there. And Malaysia now is an emerging funding body through FINAS. So that's the National Film and Development Corporation. And again, that's to foster their local talent as well. But there is money there for you to cooperate with, and it's not necessarily Malaysian projects, because they are more open to the international market now these days too. And I think...
So, okay, so... Is there anywhere, we must do a Working with Asia website, I think, with all of this on, because it's like there's no sort of one-stop shop,
no,
is there?
There's a lot of potential, but I think the thing that Asia is lacking in, like we were discussing, is more of a cooperation between broadcasters, because I think the Europeans tend to co-produce more. For example, in Europe, if you've got Arte on board, then ZDF will come on board, and then YLE will come on board, SVT, you get Scandinavia on board. It's, they all work together, whereas in Asia, it's very difficult because the audience is also very different as well. I mean, I think maybe Korea and Japan, the taste in documentaries is more similar. But outside of that, it's really hard to get, for example, a Discovery together with an NHK production, because the style is also very different as well. But talking about that, you've got your pan-region broadcasters like Discovery and National Geographic and AETN, and they, they take a wider Asian footprint, and that's another potential there in terms of co-production. But these guys, it has to be a project that is relevant to the region, and again, it has to be a big budget science project works, wildlife works, and if it's history, it has to again be something that's relevant, to the region. But there is money there, and I think also the trend now in Asia is through sponsorship and branded content. So when you're looking at working for someone like National Geographic and Discovery, who have very, very small budgets now, they tend to make the...
what are you talking... This is for... So maybe 10,000...
Not even, because, for example, National Geographic worked with Shangri-La, and basically Shangri-La put up the money to produce a travel series with Chinese actress Zhang Ziyi. And so what happened was that National Geographic got the rights to broadcast, but they didn't have to put any money into that. But
I was going to ask actually about the Nat Geos and the Discoveries mining.
Yeah, it's actually a very unfair relationship for the producer, because, I've worked with producers who I think have totally been screwed over, by Discovery and Nat Geo, because these broadcasters take the rights and they don't even pay them a license fee, or a minimal license fee. And they have these great programs that are suitable for their channel, and they get ad sales dollars from it, but the producers don't get any money, any back end at all, for that. So, so I think it's very difficult, but But sponsorship and branded content, I think, is also another direction to go as well.
Has that sort of muddied the waters in any way?
Yeah.
I mean, with, you know, like, okay, so producers in Singapore or Malaysia who are like working with these companies, and then someone else comes along and they go, oh God, no, I'm not going to touch that again because, you know, we've already done that with Discovery and Nat Geo.
Yeah.
So does it actually have that impact?
Well, I think the thing is that Asian producers are very resilient, you know, and they're hardworking and they will keep continuing. I think it's like you can kind of like keep kicking that dog again and again and they will come back. And maybe it's an Asian work ethic thing.
No, I think there's a little bit of Asian in every producer then because...
Maybe. But you just want to make your programs, you know, and so it's, you know, they have to be, I think with Asian producers and working in Asia, you have to be very resourceful, you know, because the budgets are very limited and you have to be creative in where you're going to get your money from. So perhaps it is a good idea to look at some sponsorship, then go to a broadcaster to say we have some money and see what they're going to put up. But of course, this isn't the case if you're working with a public broadcaster like NHK or KBS because they don't care about sponsors coming on board. But if you have something for National Geographic and Discovery, it seems to be more now than ever that all they want is free programming and they go to their ad sales team, see if it's going to sell, and if it's going to sell, then they'll take your program. So it's really difficult in that way. But I think it's exciting as well because, you know, you can bring in some brands without it being a cheesy product placement thing, you know, because with the Shangri-La deal, that Nat Geo did, they weren't really featured at all throughout the program. It was beautifully shot. I mean, it wasn't a great program, but, you know, the thing is National Geographic didn't have to pay for it. And I can't reveal how much the program was and how much she was paid. But, you know, it was one way for the production company to go to a broadcaster and have their idea already, you know, with a broadcaster attached, which meant that it made it easier for the sponsor to come on board, knowing that their brand was going to be out there as well. So,
I'm just going to go to Tony for a moment and ask you to show us a bad co-production.
It's terrible. No, I mean,
so
we have experiences of working with producers. I mean, that's also in Asia as well. That sometimes the whole thing about, you know, practical guide about working with Asia, I just share with international audiences like you guys who probably looking at Asia. Like we say, we don't have a one-stop shop to know who to work with, and you have a trial and error, and sometimes you may get a good producer, but sometimes you may have bad experience, and it's really a process.
But surely if they contact you guys, if anybody contacts you, you could put them in contact with the right people.
Yeah,
you've just got to ask.
But even for us, I think when we do co-production with Asian producers, we have bad experiences, and I think that's what I'm trying to say, that we got burned. I mean, sometimes once bitten, twice shy, and we got a situation where we did a project with National Geographic, and we worked through the MDA in Singapore, and we have to work with the Singapore producer, and we did the program, and it took us forever because of the mega structure. But what happened was that the production house went bankrupt, and we don't get the tape, and National Geographic's can't broadcast, we can't sell, we were investors, and we end up having to go to the court to legal recourse, and this is something which we want to avoid because it costs more to go for legal, and it's really frustrating because what we want is just to get a good show off the ground, but we end up having to chase a situation where we have to go to sue the producer, which has no point because it went bankrupt. They couldn't pay anybody. We paid the $300,000 US. They didn't pay the cameraman. They didn't pay the equipment. They didn't pay the post-production. Nothing. And we were blamed for having, you know, invested in that production house in our community because they know that we were part of it. So this is something that we have an experience. And working with language barriers, I mean, I want to show the clips that we did with a Korean producer. I mean, Korea, where Kenny shares a lot about the scene there, but we have our share of experience where it is very difficult to work with, even in Asia, with a Korean producer who's still not clued into the international format. And we were having nightmares trying to do a show that we exactly produced, and it was for History Channel. It was to celebrate the 60th anniversary of Korean War last year, and we we did the show with a producers recommended by the Korean funding agency. We don't know them, but the whole intention was to basically work with them to produce a show. But because of language capability, because of not knowing about production management, the show ends up to be really tough, and I have to fly into Korea a few times to rescue the show, and the end result, it was really not good. And our reputation as a EP, as a distributor, got suffered with History Channel. So I'll just run a very quick clip of that. If you can play DVD 2, and just show the opening of how bad the film was.
How bad the film was?
Well, not
It's not often you get this.
No, it was acceptable. It was on History, but the rating was terrible.
Okay.
No, not this one,
Asia's
sorry.
monarchy
It was
is
clip
defined.
number 3, I guess. Is it called Christmas Cargo?
Christmas Cargo.
Yeah. It's
Christmas
not
Cargo.
It's not this one. Yeah, sorry. It could be 3. I'm not sure which one it was. This one is about a history piece that talks about an incident in 1950 where people from North Korea trying to escape to South Korea, and they had to squeeze in a U.S. ship, which essentially were packed with like 12,000 people. The ship could only take maybe like 2,000. So they all packed like sardine in a can, and they will be, sort of like trying to excavate or escape through to Busan in South Korea.
And so did that company come to you with the idea?
They were pitched to us in a session in Seoul with the funding agency in Korea and the History Channel commissioning editors and me. So we picked that subject because it was relevant for that particular theme that we were looking for in the celebration of the 60th anniversary. Yeah. So, but it was like really difficult to work with them because they don't speak English, and I insisted on having a producer or a production manager that is English speaking and also understand production, but they couldn't find that in Korea. So it was like we're working with coordinator that doesn't understand.
You should have spoken to Kenny.
I know that.
I would have gone to Kenny.
Kenny will be like going through too much things.
And then there's those other 4 people.
Yeah.
Have we got this clip for
it's
Christmas
the one with the
Cargo?
color bar that was kind of long color bar, but you can just kind of run.
It's the
through
one
that
with
and
"I
just-
hate this film" written all over it.
Did I say that?
No.
No. I was quite proud that we managed to salvage it because it was like
You managed-
really
yeah.
hard. We could have not have a film.
Okay,
but
we got it.
That's the
Here we
best
go.
we could do.
Yeah. God, that's
This is the incredible story of how a ship saved 14,000 refugees.
Our ship was the last one available to take out the refugees.
American merchant marine vessel SS Meredith Victory was hastily modified to accommodate the refugees. It was the most miraculous maritime rescue by a single ship in naval history.
그냥 우리가 생각해 보면 거의 불가능이라고 생각되지.
Hongnam Harbor was the only way out of North Korea before the communist regime took full control over the territory. And the Meredith Victory was the last ship to leave Hongnam.
We knew what our job was, and we went ahead and did it.
The refugees filled the 5 cargo holds and the entire deck. They were crammed so tightly they were unable to move, like sardines in a can.
지금 생각해보면 정말 그 배를 얻어 탄 것 자체가 아주 기적이에요.
This is the story of that miraculous voyage.
I didn't like the graphic as well. It's horrible.
Okay, that must have been very cathartic
Well,
going
they don't
through
quite
that.
understand what is the opening title sequence, and it was quite hard to put together just to get the teaser in for the first minute.
Okay,
to-
so this is like Asia working with Asia, and you've got problems there. So.
Well, I mean, even within Asia, that is going to be hard for co-production.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
But I think
if
it's,
you're going to work
yeah.
with that,
But it's just an example of like you can never, it's really trial and error in terms of finding the right partner. And when I meet a new producer, even when you ask for examples of their work, just to see the production quality, it doesn't always mean that the project that you're involved in is going to pay off and look great,
yes.
So you just, it takes a while to have that relationship.
I was once told to work with a particular person in Singapore, and this was through somebody who I really respected, and then I started hearing some horror stories, and then I thought, you know, who do I trust here? But we can't really go in there and make those mistakes because, you know, if you lose money, I mean, we're always on a thin line. So
well, I do get a lot of calls
what would you
from
say?
BBC sometime in the middle of the night in Singapore say, I'm sorry, this is going to be confidential. I'm not going to tell anybody, but I just need to find out more about this production company because we're recommended to work with them and we're looking at a co-pro and I heard story about that. Can you verify? I will not name you. I will not say that you say it.
I will not name you.
Yeah, I know. So it was quite
So
scary. And
do
it's like
that?
middle of the night, like 12 midnight, I just got a BBC commission editor calling me and asked me. So
There's a lot of off-the-record conversations, I think.
I think, well, it's good that they do some groundwork, but the horrible fact of it is that they still went ahead because the only condition that tie in with the MDA money was to work with that production company. So when I saw it, I said, heading for trouble, and true enough, the whole show went completely disastrous. And
then they could blame you next. No, they didn't have to blame you.
They don't blame me. They came and thanked me for telling them the truth, but at the same time, I mean, they
went ahead. They had to do it.
They have no other choice. They needed the money.
Yeah.
But that again goes back to my point about finding the right partner as well, like what Nha-Uyen has said about it. It's the same point.
Has anybody got any questions out there, or would you like to mention to any of the commissioning editors here any ideas? Seeing they're all here.
Maybe pitching to them.
Yeah, pitch to them. No, has anybody got any questions? Has anybody done a co-production? Yes?
We've done lots of co-productions with NHK and also with PTS actually for Cloudgate Dance Theatre, which is a Taiwanese dance group, so that's obviously very relevant for the region. And so it was more of it was things that were recorded here, not here, but you know, in Europe, but kind of paid for, I suppose. So it's more of a co-financing, if you want, rather than, you know, a local crew. So it's a different kind of experience.
Yes. Has anybody got
a good one?
Yeah, a good one. Yeah. Has anybody got any like things that they are looking at doing, which they would like to co-produce with? Yes. Someone up there? No. You just no. Okay. I have. Can I? Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
Hi. My question is maybe revolving a little bit around working on and with mainland China and with CCTV. And yes, I hear what you're saying about branded content, because it seems that you can't sell anything in China unless you've got the sponsor on board and that the sponsor pays for everything across the whole board. But what I've seen very often happening, and I feel sort of unfortunate bringing this up in the context of mainland China, but what tends to happen is you have an idea, you go to a Chinese, not Chinese broadcaster, a Chinese production partner, and then the next thing you know, they've rode you out of the frame, they're finding a local sponsor or a regional sponsor, they've sold the idea to CCTV, and you're back in Europe, you're not even aware that this has happened.
Yeah,
and has that happened to you? Has that happened to you on the Asian?
I think with China, I think it's really tricky because IP there, you really have to protect it. For example, I'm working on a project at the moment. It's a really big project with Zhang Ziyi. But, you know, we were I had a meeting with CCTV at MIP, and I had also had a conversation with CICC. And even then, we were still very protective of our idea, and I didn't send anything out to them, you know, the treatment or anything like that until we were really, really sure. And, you know, with CICC, because they're a government body and they've worked with broadcasters before, they have a really good record of that. And you know, their intentions, I think, are much more pure. That's a lot safer. But I would say when you're working with China, you really have to be careful. I mean, you know, even other Asians are very, you know, reluctant or, you know, very hesitant to work with China because of that reason as well. And, you know, even I was talking to some film financing people in Singapore, and, you know, the one thing they asked us was, well, you know, even if you work with China, how do you know you're going to get your money out of China? You know, and so that's something that you really have to be careful with. And I think it's it's really hard to try and find the partner. And I think before you commit to working with anyone, try to do as much research you have as possible and get references and speak to people who've worked with them to see how trustworthy they are. I mean, everybody wants to work with China at the moment because I think there's, you know, that perception that there's a lot of money, and there is. But you have to be careful to protect your idea, because I think it is very easy for someone to cut you out, and especially if you're living, you know, in another hemisphere. You know, it's really hard to track that. But, you know, with that, I think it's still quite new to do co-productions there and to find the right partner. So all I can suggest is just be really, really careful, because even producers who've worked in China for a few years, the one thing that you'll hear is that China is actually more expensive than you think to co-produce. You know, the cost there, because they know that you're a foreigner and that you have no choice, you know, but to accept their price. So it really is, you know, you have to build that relationship up for a number of years. And I think the best thing for you to do is to speak to people who've already worked with reputable companies, but, you know, give it some time and don't jump onto the first, you know, person who can tell you that, yeah, I've got a great relationship, because everybody has a great relationship with CCTV, you know. Everybody knows someone, or their uncle knows someone, or something like that. And that's the line that you'll constantly be fed. So just be wary of that.
If I know companies have been, like, you know, working in China for 10 years, even 10 years, they set up company there, but they're still trying to figure out how to work with them. I mean, I know New Zealand have companies set up there, but one way that you can do if you have the resources is that, I mean, of course, for most of the independent producers, you can't set up a company there through a local contact, because if you can, then you are within the system, you work within the system. I think gradually I see a lot of companies coming into Singapore. Dallas Smithson, they used to go there, 10 apps. I mean, a lot of the UK companies are now setting up shops in Singapore. But the way to do it is that you have to be like a local company. You don't be a UK company in Singapore. And I think that's how, but how to be that local company. One way is to maybe if you can find someone you trust, that do a joint venture and set up a company, like give 30% local ownership to that as a partnership, and that qualify you instantly as a Singapore company or a China company. And maybe with that structure, you could better work around the system. But of course, if you don't have that kind of resources, then like what Nan said, you have to get your research done. Don't hastily get into the co-production without doing your due diligence.
Yeah, but I think one way now, as Tony mentioned, is that Singapore is now actually seen as a gateway to China. You know, and I think because, you know, in Singapore, working with a company that speaks Cantonese really helps. So it's good for you to partner up with someone. And I think Singapore's good because they've got laws, you know, and they've got rules set. And so working, even then, that's not a foolproof way. But I think it's a good start, you know, to pair up with, you know, a local company in Singapore who has those contacts, because, you know, that's more and more what's going on in terms of producers working with China, because Singapore now is seen as the gateway into China.
I'm just going to ask, anybody got any more questions before I... Oh, here we go. Oh, we have questions. Okay.
I'm just wondering if anyone's worked with Thailand, and if now you would be a bit trepidatious about working with Thailand because of the political situation.
There's no money in Thailand, honestly.
First of all, they say, no, we don't want you coming for money. But there's no money in Thailand. You got it.
There really isn't.
4 times that I haven't said this.
But there is, for example, one way that you can, but it depends on the project, is to go through an advertising company. For example, Dentsu, who is a big company in Japan, now have an office in Thailand. And they are looking for projects where they can get their sponsors on board, but it has to be the right project, so they can match your project up with sponsors and they can find money to make it locally. But in the rest of Asia, I think it's more formats that work rather than documentaries. It's really, they want, you know, the next Idol or X Factor or something like that. And when you look at Southeast Asia, when you look at Malaysia, Indonesia and Thailand, it's more formats that they can localise that works for them. It's not really these, you know, beautiful documentaries that they like, you know. And documentaries for them is really, it's actually gets a lot harder now to sell to a public broadcaster in Asia, because especially in these territories that I'm talking about, because they are more interested in localising formats. Yeah.
Oh, and another question here.
Before that, I like to give you some good information about China. In China, CCTV launched the documentary channel this January, and when CCTV launched the animation channel, then all the local stations in China began animation. Then that's a sign to begin the animation industry in China. Okay, then this is a sign, good sign for the documentary industry. Of course, mainly in China, but I know I have a good friend in CCTV, and he is, right now he's in the English channel, but he tried to move to the documentary channel. And he studied in London, he speaks English very well, and he takes the channel control of documentary channel to Asian Side of Dog or Input or maybe next IDFA. And he said that he has a huge budget, but he doesn't know how to use it.
That's a good problem.
He can't use it.
What a problem.
So,
get him to the science congress.
If something happens, something starts from CCTV, you have the chance. But please be cautious about the theme, okay? You can easily imagine. You can never co-produce a political social issue. Maybe at first, wildlife or culture, purely cultural or history.
And would they be looking for like a global stories or yeah?
Then I advise him to go to IDFA as a commissioning editor. I don't know if he can. He already went IDFA as a pitcher because he has official private project. So he pitched his own project last year in IDFA.
Well, he's not corrupt. He's not putting the money into his own project. He's got all this money and he can't.
He's allowed to do both things.
What's his name?
Chao-Chi.
Chao-Chi. That helped. Okay, we're after him.
I invest my money to his project.
You invested in his project.
It's official.
Yeah.
Everyone knows it's official. Anyway, there is a good sign.
That's a good sign that.
And I saw Stephen.
Yes.
And he's working with the LIC League company in China. The League has the slot in local station in China. So, and the LIC acquired many programs from NHK. Okay. The League is a kind of gate to enter. League pay. Usually, local station doesn't pay. He only gives us the commercial slot. So we have to sell for ourselves. So it is not good. But I think there are some, maybe you know much about that. And we have some company which can be the gate for you. So maybe you can wait maybe a year or two. Maybe you have broader chance to China.
Good. Start with the distributors.
All right. Can I add one thing to back up what he said?
Oh, sorry.
Actually, to get the huge CCTV money, you will need another network in SARFT, which is the governing body of the broadcasters. So anyway, when you work with the CCTV, they will need approval from SARFT. So the networking is very important when you work with the Chinese partners. And it's very hard to get revenue from Chinese market because actually we sell some program to China, but they're very cheap price. But at the same time, you can negotiate with them. You know, they have slot, then they can offer you the advertising time. That means you have to sell advertisement in China as well. So it's a lot of jobs. But yes, it's another work. But it's how they work. So you will need a Chinese local partner. to do your job. To sell your documentary, you will need to talk to. For co-production, you will need SART people, and if you want to sell your documentary to Chinese partner, you will also need a Chinese other partner. So very networked.
Sounds like we should write a book on this. We certainly need a website coming up about this, because it seems that there's, there are definite ways and paths, and we really, it's hard enough understanding how Arte works, let alone. There's a question up the back here.
Thanks, Barbara.
Yeah.
I've got a question about cross-platform, and I realise, in the region we've got some of the fastest bandwidth in the world. So I was wondering how open some of the broadcasters and commissioners are to working on co-productions to do with cross-platform, and what's the precedence in the region. I know I watched this great film about Japanese jazz, which was one of these brand new cross-platform works on the web, but I haven't seen much else. I haven't seen anything from Korea, for example, or anything from China yet. I was wondering if you can tell us a bit about that.
Basically, NHK operated by audience fee, okay? So audience fee is for the broadcast, not for the website. So basically, we cannot use budget only for internet, okay? So we have to, of course, we have to air the program. Then the website comes with program. Basically, website is for the promotion, basically. So we cannot use huge budget for the cross-media network. But I think KBC is different. KBC is more ahead of NHK as for the media content, new media.
Actually, we have a same and a different thing from Japan, because we also run by license fee from the audiences. So the broadcast will not make a revenue from the new media platform. However, actually the South Koreans launched the world's first mobile broadcasting, and we produce a lot more episodes. And when it comes to 3D, also we produce a lot 3D, but not for our revenue, but to support government policy, to support Samsung or LG. Yeah, they're trying to sell their products, so they will need content. So they push broadcasters to make a content, but we reluctantly, the broadcasters reluctantly make the content, movie shows, because we have to. You understand what I'm saying? Right.
Jesse?
Yeah, my answer is about the same, except I would suggest probably can approach, the alternative approach probably to the teleco, because teleco, like Chunghwa Telecom, maybe because it's like they offer this multimedia on-demand service, just like IPTV. And because for our broadcaster, we have our mandate to satisfy the mass broadcasting mission first. So like Ken just mentioned, for this moment, the web original content is still in the development stage for our in-house, producers instead of, outside commission.
We're going to wrap up in a moment, but I'd like to just ask you, where would we go, which market would we go to in Asia to meet you guys and to meet also the producers that you're talking about? I mean, maybe just sort of give me a couple, not too many. What would you say, Jessie?
Yeah, I would suggest, because considering the nature of the independent documentary filmmaking, I would still suggest, for instance, in Taiwan or mainland China, have this documentary film festival. You can easily Google it. For instance, in Taiwan, we have a biannual documentary, international documentary film festival. If your film got selected, then probably, first of all, we will consider to buy it, or if it's selected in input, then the chance, the opportunity increase a lot. Yeah, so that's my suggestion.
Okay. And what would you say, Ken?
I will go to, or my team will go to CNEX Film Festival in Taiwan.
Yeah, CNEX.
And
what's it called again?
CNEX.
CNEX.
Yeah, Ben is here. President is here. It's maybe it's end of
October.
October, I think.
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot to mention. I should be the one to mention it. Okay. Yeah, CNEX. Actually, the founder of CNEX Foundation is here in this Sheffield. You can grab some information about. It's a pitching forum joined by all the major European and including us. We are going to co-host part of the activities. Yeah, I will strongly suggest.
And the Guangzhou Film Festival is very good,
yes.
But I heard that they have some difficulty to get the finals.
Yes, I've heard that too. Yeah.
And the next year, the Asian side of Doc will be held in Singapore.
Yeah.
I think it's very good.
Yes.
Asian side of the Doc.
Yeah.
This year it was held in Seoul, which was very good. And
that's enough. We can't do it all. We can't do it all.
In Japan.
Hold on. We've got one more. But wait, there's more.
Now we don't have any. Now we don't have any. But now the ATP is a kind of association of the independent production in Japan, is now planning to begin the Tokyo pitch.
Tokyo pitch.
And
okay.
But this year it's a kind of test case. But next year maybe it will be successful.
What time of year is that on?
It is not decided yet.
Okay, not decided. Okay, very good. And Kenny, what would you say?
Actually, we had two big events this year. It's already finished. In March, we had the Asian side of Doc in Seoul, and we had an import last month. And actually, when it comes to Korea, there is a market called the BCWW, which will be held in September. But KBS is very much trying to set up kind of you have the Tokyo pitch, something like that, Seoul pitch. We're trying to set up pitching forum, probably from next year or the year after.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what about you, Tony? What's the one?
I think the Asia Media Festival in December, so about 5th of December, I think, in Singapore, at ATF, or the Asia Television Forum, or now it's called the Asia Media Festival, where they collate, television, animation, content 360, which is more of what we call cross-platform, into one event. So that one might be a good sort of network point for producers in Asia. Because I think there are also people from Hong Kong and from Malaysia there, so it's kind of a good market to go in somewhere in early December.
And Nha-Uyen, and then we'll...
Yeah, I still think the best one out of all of them, I think, is Asian side of the Doc, because it's like Sunnyside, but based in Asia. Because I think why it works also, what's exciting is that it rotates to a different country. It's kind of like the Science Congress that goes to a different country.
Yeah, we would say Science
Which we love,
Congress.
yeah,
we
which
love.
is my favourite in the schedule.
Plugging.
Yeah.
Fantastic. It's good to know. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That would. Yes. Yeah.
Can I just say one thing? Actually, here we have the Sheffield Doc Festival extends to Asia because Sheffield has now KBS and PBS. It's all first time. To me, it's first time, right? Previous. NHK was here before, right? But anyway, this year we have CNX. The Sheffield extends to Asia. This sort of the meeting is prepared. In this month, in La Rochelle, there is also similar session like this. So if you can't travel long distances, they are in either far, I think, all MICOM, I'm pretty sure there will some specialized session targeting Asians. So
I'm just sorting out holidays for people, really.
Yeah.
The places I'd like to go. Well, listen, we're going to wrap it up. I'd like to thank all of our panelists. Thank you for coming along, and big round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.